Hey guys, happy Thursday and welcome to my tea time. Cheers. I wanted to talk about today about self-love. So before I get into that, let me have a drink of my tea. So I didn't do tea time. Hey, Janet. So I didn't do tea time last week because I was a little sick and I lost my voice. So you were literally gonna hear like a horse on this live. But I hope you're doing well. What are you up to, Janet? So yeah, I hope you guys are having a beautiful week. I went on a hike on Tuesday to one of my favorite hikes in Lewis Falls, and it was so nice. It was so grounding, and nature and being in the trails and being with the dirt and the trees and all of that good stuff is my happy place. So I was thinking about doing the 52 hike challenge again and doing a week or a hike once a week, working on break. Nice, having it at work. Thank you for showing up. So yeah, I'm thinking about doing a hike once a week, and I belong to a couple of hiking groups on Facebook. And a couple weeks ago, I created this event for this upcoming Sunday to hike. What is that? I totally forgot what it's called. Okay, I'll send it to you if you're interested. Um, oh my God, I had such a brain fart. So I'm doing this hike on Sunday. I created this event on a Facebook group, and if you're watching right now or later, let me know if you want to join. I took my break on purpose at 12. Oh, hell yeah, thank you. Jenny, you're coming with me on Sunday, right? So I'm giving an open invitation to anybody else who wants to come. So, hey! Yeah, so if you want to join, come and join. Hike once a week, maybe. I don't know yet, but that's like the plan. So today I wanted to talk about self-love, and last week I my intention was to talk about self-love and talk about what it means. Like, what does self-love even mean? Like, what does it look like? And what does it mean to like accept yourself? And what does it mean to be yourself? And this came through a conversation that I had with a friend. I was catching up, or we were catching up. We went to go get coffee, and we were catching up, like on our lives and what we've been up to. And he mentioned how he got into the dating world and how he was nervous, of course. Like, when we get into the dating world, we get a little nervous of so many things. But how a lot of his friends mentioned to just be himself and to love himself. And he was like, what does that mean? Like, what? Tell me more. Um, and I don't know, it just dawned on me like, oh, that's true, right? Like, if you've never heard of what loving yourself means or to be yourself, if you've never heard of that, like, how do you even begin? Like, what's the definition, or where do you start? And there's so many, like, I want to say layers. There's so much depth into this subject. And I was writing and just kind of reflecting on how I wanted to approach this tea time with self-love. And what came up for me today was what it means to love yourself and boundaries, or not and boundaries, but how loving yourself includes boundaries. And boundaries in the emotional, mental, boundaries in a sense of it being emotionally, mentally, physically, and even spiritually. So this is where I want to take my tea time today. So let me have another sip of my tea. And one of the things that popped up was how in this generation or in this era and this space that we live in, there are so many messages of self-love. Myself included, like I always post on my stories, self-love, like love yourself, and messages here and there that root back to self-love. And there's more to it, like there's depth into it. So for you guys that are watching, what does self-love mean to you? What does it look like? And so again, I'm going to share my own definition of self-love and go into it in terms of how it also means having boundaries. Self-love means boundaries. Okay, so, and then also, if you're interested or if this catches your eye, I was thinking about next week doing a tea time of what being yourself means, what accepting yourself means. I wanted to do it all in one tea time, but it can go pretty in depth, and I'd rather do it in chunks than just like do the pieces on the top in a way. Okay, so what does self-love mean to me? So self-love to me means prioritizing yourself, prioritizing your overall well-being, and again, that goes back to emotionally, mentally, physically, and spiritually. And for me, self-love also means not so self-love for me also means being aware of your flaws, what you call fault flaws, or what you don't like about yourself, and just simply being aware of them and accepting them or working through them. So, hey, Vrain. And yeah, so that's the definition for me for self-love, and I feel that every day is practice to to love ourselves. And Janet said, loving yourself unconditionally, all of you, even the flaws, yeah, with healthy boundaries. Yeah, heck yeah. Heck yeah. So what does healthy boundaries mean to you? Curious. And Janet and I, we've had conversations of self-love and all that good stuff, which is awesome to have people in your life where you can talk about these things with and get in depth and just talk out loud and be curious with it. So thank you, Janet. I'm excited to see you tonight. Okay, so side note. Ibrahim, if you're still here, what does self-love mean to you? Let's see. Oh man, I'm having a brain fart right now. Okay, so let's go back to boundaries, right? So mentally, what does it mean? Like, what does it mean to have boundaries mentally and to love yourself mentally? And what came up for me was taking space, taking time to have self-reflection, to ponder on what you believe in, to ponder on your values, your belief systems, your opinions, to have the time to, yeah, kind of go in depth with all of that. Okay, so I'm having a brain fart. I totally forgot your name. Oh, what is it? Omnipotent Mother. And I'm like, fuck, because I talk to you all the time. Okay, so she said, self is knowing who you are, morals, boundaries, strengths, weaknesses, and using that to engage with the world and people you meet. It means standing up for yourself when you need to and learning to. Not to let other people's opinions affect you. Amber, yes. Thank you. Oh man, I'm bad with names. So, okay, Janet said, being able to speak how you feel without hiding what you truly feel. Yeah, so that's another part of mental boundaries that I wanted to mention is having the freedom to share your beliefs, your values, your opinions, your perspectives. And in that moment when you're in a space where somebody is putting you down or where the opinions are not matching and they're making it seem as you're the wrong one, or whenever that space is there, is setting the boundary of, hey, I respect your opinion, or hey, I'm aware that we don't agree, but can you please respect respect my opinion or my perspective? And so so that's what comes up for me for like a mental boundary, where of course we're not all going to agree. Like, of course we're not all going to have the same beliefs, opinions, perspectives. We all have different backgrounds. We all grew up differently. We all have our own sets of experiences that shape all of that. So, of course, it's okay to disagree, but it's also having that space where we respect each other and where it's okay to disagree. And it's fun to be in that space sometimes because you do learn. And there is a space of, okay, like I may not agree with you or have the same opinion or perspective, but maybe I can understand where you're coming from. Or maybe I can, see your lens of the world now. Amber said, being apologetic and being firm with the world by saying, this is who I am. Yeah. Yeah. Janet said, love you. Have to go back to work. Okay, love you. Thank you for joining, Janet. Mwah. Amber, yes. Being unapologetic. This weekend I had this meditation, or it was this weekend or last weekend, and what came through, and it was like a guided meditation with a life coach, and what came through was myself like kind of being on the grass like this in a way, and being unapologetic for who I was or who I am. And what came through for me was having this feeling of like I'm not ashamed of who I am, and it felt really nice. And that's part of like the work of like self-love, where I feel like the more we practice this, like the more we feel unapologetic and more unashamed of who we are. So then another thing that pops up for me for self-love is, again, like going back to like self-love and boundaries, is emotionally. Emotionally, like what does that look like? Like what does it look like to love yourself emotionally and to have boundaries emotionally? And for me, what comes up for me and from my experience is creating, again, the space to feel your feelings and to feel your emotions and sit with them no matter how uncomfortable they are. And this could be super hard for many of us because as soon as we like touch on a little bit of uncomfortableness, we want to go out and do something to make us feel better. But part of this self-love for me is sitting with it. These are emotions, feelings that are passing by, and it's just witnessing them or feeling them as they pass through. So from my own experience of learning this and what I've been learning and all this stuff is that, again, like sometimes we want to go reach for maybe like a night out with girlfriends, or we want to go reach for like a drink, or maybe like a boy or a girl that we're dating, or like hanging out with them, a sexual encounter, maybe like eating. And all of these they stray away from ourselves from feeling our feelings and emotions. So for me, like self-love means sitting in those uncomfortable, raw feelings as they pass through and not going into that instant gratification of something that's going to make you feel good or make you feel high for a moment in time, because those feelings are still going to be there no matter what. Those feelings are going to be there when you come back, or they're going to be there the next night or the other weekend. So from my own experience, it's like, well, let's just sit with them and feel the rawness and how uncomfortable they are so we can release them so they don't keep showing up over and over again. And for myself, like when I actually go out with a friend, or when I'm in that space of maybe a dinner or like dating, it's not because I'm trying to get rid of my uncomfortable feelings. It's not because I'm trying to not feel the raw feelings. It's more of a it's becoming more of a genuine intention. So, hey guys, how are you guys? Oh, hey, music. Hey, Susan. I might pronounce this wrong. Hey, Cassie. I hope you guys are doing well. So, I'm talking about self love and boundaries and what it means to me. What does self love mean to me? And something that kept popping up for me was boundaries emotionally, mentally, physically, and even spiritually. So, I'm going in depth with what that looks like and what it means to me again. So Amber said agree so much. This is something I've learned about myself this past couple of months. Oh hell yeah. Hell yeah. That's awesome. That's fucking awesome. It's uncomfortable in the moment, especially if it's something that we've never experienced before. And believe me, like I've had moments where recently like I touched on this like deep loneliness that I've had for a very long time. And in that space, like it feels so fucking uncomfortable. It does feel like you want to run or that you want to get rid of it or just just that instant gratification, but again, it's so worth it afterwards. You do find clarity, a sense of like freedom, a sense of like relief. And I guess, and again, this is from like my own personal experience, and I feel like we all have the capability to go through that space like that and feel the freedom and the clarity and the relief and at some point like peace and joy. Okay, so emotionally, right? Something for me too is like creating time to do the things that you enjoy because that adds to your cup emotionally. So for me is like, okay, what is it something that I love to do by myself? Like I love to read, I love to go to a cafe shop, I love to go on a hike by myself, I love to um explore like a different restaurant or a downtown area. I love photography. And for you, it can be something else, right? Like the gym, painting, drawing, um, and doing that because it also adds the feel good feelings to your cup, to who you are, to so it for me. It's like if we can create the space to feel these raw, uncomfortable feelings, let's also create the space to feel and create those feelings of joy and happiness and feel good feelings and boundaries. What does that look like? Susan, if you're still here, what does self love mean to you? Or anybody else who is watching, what does self love mean to you? Okay, so this is something that I've been learning recently is how we are not responsible for other people's feelings. And we're not responsible for the way people react. And yeah, and yeah, I think we can trigger people's feelings in certain ways, but we're not responsible for them. And for a very, very long time, for me was like if I made somebody angry, if I made someone sad, if I made someone mad, it was my responsibility and I had to fix it in any way possible, even if it meant putting myself second, even if it meant doing things that I didn't want to do, even if it meant breaking my own boundaries, which I probably didn't even know what boundaries meant at the time. But we are not responsible, again, for people's feelings or emotions or reactions. And something that came up recently, I was in a brief relationship, but something that came up in that relationship was hearing you made me feel this way. And whenever I heard that, it was like, wait, hold on. I did not make you feel anyway. I did not make you feel these feelings that you're talking about. Like, own your emotions. You feel this way. And it's also been practice for me to share it in that way where it's like, sometimes I want to, before, something that I'm practicing too is like wanting to share with my parents, like, you make me feel this way. But it's practice to own our own feelings as well of like, I feel this way, XYZ. And maybe sharing why. This is where like dialogue, communication comes in. Um, so it's being aware of those feelings or those comments of people when they share, you make me feel this way. And again, before I would be like, oh shit, like I made this person feel this way. Like, how do I fix it? Like, what do I need to do? And now when I hear those words, it's like, wait, hold on. Like, can you please own your feelings or your emotions of how you feel? Or can you please have a conversation about how you're feeling and not put me in that conversation? I'm open to hear and I'm open to listen, and I'll try my best to have an open heart or an open space of judgment, non-judgment, but please own your feelings and emotions. And that's the way that I've had the conversation back, but it's also practice on the other way around, where it's practice for me to also own my emotions and say, I feel this way. And that's part for me of like self-love. Hey, Courtney! Music said the feeling of guilt. Okay. What the feeling of guilt is, can you explain more on that? Hey, Courtney! So yes, again, guys, you are not responsible for people's feelings, emotions, or reactions. Okay, this is the part where like self-love comes into play, where if they want to do the work, they can explore that themselves, and all you can do is create a space of non-judgment, of an open ear, of open dialogue. And it works the same way around, where you're also responsible for your own feelings and emotions and reactions. And it's that part of reflection and curiosity within yourself to explore that as well. And again, we can trigger other people, but we're not responsible. Like, okay, so thank you guys for still like staying here. Okay, so the other one for me is spirituality. So self-love, spirituality, and maybe some of you aren't spiritual, which is totally fine, but I consider myself to be spiritual, and spirituality can mean so many things to many different people. So yeah. So for me, when it comes to like spirituality, is like listening to your intuition and practicing your own faith and being grounded in it, even when it might seem silly or even when it might feel or seem stupid to the world. And this could be a little bit back on like having your own ground with it. And what does spirituality mean to me, right? So my definition of spirituality is my relationship with God, with the universe. And I don't belong to any specific religion, but I do have different practices from different religions that I practice in my own life every day. And I feel like that's what spirituality means to me. So, so practicing your own faith and again, being grounded in it, even when it seems silly or like stupid to the world. I know when I started going on this path of my own, my own faith, I started to use like sage, and I started to use candles, and I started to meditate, and then I started getting into like Pablo Santos, and there was a little bit of shyness with using it, or there was a little bit of worry of what other people were going to think or what my family was going to say. And in that moment, it's like, it feels good. It adds something to my life. So why not? Even if it might seem stupid to my mom, even if it might seem stupid to like the rest of the world, I'm going to do it because it feels good to me and it adds joy and it adds to my practice. So music said, you talked about not expressing your emotions to protect people's feelings, and sometimes we feel guilty for expressing our emotions to others because of the outcome it might bring. Okay, let me read that one more time. So you talked about not expressing your emotions to protect people's feelings, and sometimes we feel guilty for expressing our emotions to others because of the outcome it might bring. Okay, so I'm always like I don't know if advocate is like the right word to use, but I always share like you should totally express your feelings or emotions to people. Um, because if we don't, like we do end up bottling them up and they come out in different ways with like being passive aggressive or with certain actions of anger or resentment. So in that space, like I always suggest whenever friends message me or whenever I'm going through something, it's practice for me to take my own advice too, but to share like, hey, express it to your friend, to your partner, to your coworker, to whoever it is. And always having the intention of how you just want to express. So it's if we go in with the intention that they're going to make us feel better or that something's going to come out of it or that um like they're going to do something about it, then in that space I feel like we are putting ourselves second and we're also putting ourselves and setting ourselves up for more anger or more frustration or more what's that word like if our expectations aren't met, like we're gonna feel down about it. So I feel like if we go with the intention with an outcome, then we're setting ourselves up to suffer in a way. So for me it's always like, hey, like if you're gonna share, try to go in with just wanting to share your feelings and emotions. And when people do act a certain way, however they might react in anger and frustration, or they might be like in their head about it. Whatever it is, you can always remind them of your intention. Like, hey, my intention is to just share how I'm feeling, or my intention is just to share like what's going on in my mind. And sometimes it breaks through feelings and the emotions of the other person. Sometimes it doesn't. And it'll depend. Like time to step away while that person gathers like their feelings and thoughts, or it's going to be an open dialogue of them sharing how they feel. So, but guilt is it seems like it's always present too, especially when we're practicing self-love. And I know I felt guilty a lot with my relationships with my own family, where I want to express something and like they share something and I feel guilty, or where I want to do something that is adding to my life joy and peace and I'm saying no to them and I feel guilty for it. And Gabor Mate, he mentioned something along the lines of like when we feel guilty, it's a good thing because we're choosing ourselves. And that's been stuck in my mind, like replaying over and over again. So yeah, so going to like spirituality, that's like the depths of spirituality for me. I think that's something that I'm still pondering on. So if you guys have anything else that you would like to share, or something comes up. Okay, so the last one is um physically. So self-love and how do I'm still like as I'm live, I'm trying to like process like how do I say it? How do I say like okay, self-love, what it looks like physically and what do boundaries look like physically? So what came up for me was like listening to your body and what it needs. Sometimes it needs rest, sometimes it needs good food, good nutrition, an apple, a salad, a banana, a juice. Listening to our body when it wants to move around. Go for a run, go for a walk, walking around just like the neighborhood. Yeah, so it's listening to your body and yeah, like choosing healthier options. It might not be all the time, but if it's maybe like during breakfast time you want to have an oatmeal, it's like listening to that rather than like going for sausage and eggs and pancakes and this whole meal. And I feel like it kind of aligns a little bit with the emotional self-love slash boundaries, where emotionally, like when we feel uncomfortable feelings or they're raw, we want to run to something that's going to make us feel better right away, that instant gratification or that high. And I feel like it could relate back to the way that we also listen to our bodies and give it space to tell us what it needs. Where sometimes it wants something healthier or it wants to move, and for many of us, it could be hard to make that choice. So we want that maybe instant gratification of like a chocolate bar because it makes us feel good, or because it satisfies like the craving for a little bit, or because it just tastes so fucking good. So it's like being able to choose the healthier option because our body needs it rather than like the unhealthy option. Um, and saying no to unwanted touch and kisses and like even hugs. Um, yeah, and having enough sleep is like another one. And also removing yourself where there is invasion of personal space or privacy. So that's another one for me that came up. Um, but yeah, there's like I remember a while back I was on a date and somebody gave me a hug and they wanted to kind of just like keep their hand like over or their arm over my shoulder, and I was like, no. No, thank you. And that was like my own boundary of I just don't feel comfortable and I don't want to do that. I just met you. No. Okay, Amber said, everything you said today I think about all the time, but I have no one to share it with. That, oh, call me. Call me, call me, call me. Can't wait to see you in person because last time we got vegan food together, we had such a good conversation. Oh my god, yeah. You know, I think about that conversation from time to time because there's so much that I honored from you being so vulnerable in that space. Like I remember we were talking about your pregnancy and you were so raw with a lot of things that you shared, and I was like, dang, like she is open and raw and sharing out loud and she doesn't give a fuck. Like this is where she's at. So I'll think about that from time to time. We can totally have phone conversations about this too. But I'm looking forward to seeing you too. I briefly read your message, so, but I'll respond back. Okay. Okay. So then, yeah. So these are so this is what came up for me today in terms of like self-love and what it means and the boundaries. So when I was like reflecting on today, a lot of it came up. I was like, talk about boundaries and what that is in these different areas. And again, it's something that like I'm also learning and that I'm practicing every day, because setting boundaries, again, depending how we grew up, could be taken as like a fuck you to other people, as a fuck you to like family, or as if you don't care, or as like you're not a kind person or a caring person or a loving person. And a lot of this is just not giving a fuck what those voices say and standing your ground. And the more you do it, I feel like the easier it gets and the more peaceful you'll be and the more freedom you'll feel, because it does feel good. There might be feelings or a season of guilt, but it doesn't last long, because you'll realize like the outcomes of setting boundaries feel like. So, yeah. And then also like something that I wanted to add just before like I ended is like self-talk. Like that's a huge one when it comes to self-love and even boundaries within yourself. And I feel like the self-love can tie in with like every section that I talked about, where it's like, how do you talk to yourself? Like, do you talk to yourself as if you were talking to your 5-year-old self or to your kid? Like a lot of the things that we tell ourselves, like we wouldn't share it to a friend, to a kid. So it's like, why are we telling ourselves that? You know, some of that stuff could be, like I'm stupid, I'm dumb, I'm a piece of shit. Like what else? I'm so dramatic, or I look ugly, or I'm so fat. It's like all of these words we would never share it to a friend. We would never share it to like a 5-year-old, 3-year-old. So it's like, why do we tell it to ourselves? So it's being aware of our own narrative, and when we hear it, it's like, wait, hold on, and changing the story, or changing the narrative, changing the words. And again, it comes with practice. So let's see. Amber said, yeah, so raw about my husband at the time, and I moved on from him. Me too. Me too. I think it's so empowering to have these boundaries and saying no when you need to. Yeah. Boundaries are everything, and saying no. I couldn't find the quote, but there's a quote that I read the other day where it said, having boundaries limits you from having interactions with narcissists, sociopaths, and what else? And something else. And I was like, oh shit, like, that makes sense. Like, that totally makes sense. And it just dawned on me, like, oh. Like, I don't know, it's something that I was, like, reflecting on for a little bit. But, yeah, so before I end it, I want to end it with a quote. So if you want to share anything else, Amber said, I read if you give yourself a high five, it makes you feel good because we associate high fives with a job well done. Ah, there you go. So whoever's watching, even afterwards, practice that. I haven't tried that. I'll probably try it myself. Give yourself a high five. Is it like after you do something or just in general? I'm gonna do that after like every life coaching call. You know what? After this live, I'm gonna give myself a high five. Like, fuck yeah, you showed up. Music said, yes, changing negative self to a positive self-talk and practice positive affirmations. Yeah, positive affirmations. I used to have them in my mirror. So whenever I got dressed, it would be like, I love you, or you look great, you're doing a good job. Amber said, I don't know. So maybe giving ourselves a high five in every moment. Like when we do something that we love, and maybe when we like feel shitty, like, fuck yeah, I'm human. In the mirror. Okay, so I'm going to end this with this quote. Thank you guys for showing up and for sharing your comments and for chatting with me. So, Amber said, after your morning affirmation, give yourself a high five. Okay, there you go. So we have a little homework. After your morning affirmation, give yourself a high five. Okay, sounds good. Okay, so I'm going to end it with this quote by Eckhart Tolle, and it goes like this. Give up defining yourself to yourself or to others. You won't die. You will come to life. And don't be concerned with how others define you. When they define you, they are limiting themselves, so it's their problem. Whenever you interact with people, don't be there primarily as a function or a role, but as a field of consciousness presence. You can only lose something that you have, but you cannot lose something that you are. Yeah. Eckhart Tolle. So a lot of this practice is to become aware of who we are and not give a fuck. Okay, much love, guys. I love you. Bye.